here to your right is called Coconut Mesa. And Coconut Mesa is named after Mr. Coconut, who was one of the early sort of founders and contributors of the city of Alpine. He built the baseball stadium and the park and a bunch of other stuff around here. And if I'm not mistaken, this Coconut Mesa was his private ranch, but I'm not exactly clear about that. What you're beginning to see up in the distance is the beginning of the Chizos Mountains, and that's where we're headed. We've dropped down over the mountain range. We crossed there where I used to live, and we're now running down on Jackass Flats, which runs quite a long way between here and Terlingua Studi Butte. And when we get down to Terlingua, we're gonna make a right there in Studi Butte. We'll go through Terlingua town. I might even take you on a little spin through the ghost town, but then we'll pass on through and go to Lajitas Golf Resort. That's our ultimate destination today. Notice how the train's getting a lot flatter. Excuse me. While we're cruising along, here, I'll turn you around. Let's see, there we go. While we're cruising here, I just want to thank several people who have encouraged me to continue making videos. I made several of them when I first came down here, and I really haven't made much of anything in the last year or so, but there's at least 3 different people who have greatly encouraged me to keep making videos. One of them is my daughter, Martha Ann. I love you. And one of them is my friend, Danny. I love you too. He's encouraged me, and very much, more than he realizes. And then I'd also like to encourage Melanie, Angelica, and Sonny. Those 2 guys, they came down here. They are real live internet influencers from London, England. And Melanie and Sonny are a filmmaking team that travel to different places and describe different things. If you go to YouTube and you look up Melanie Angelica and look at the Texas video, you'll see that I played a role in it. I have a little tour and transport company, and they hired me to take them on a tour of the area, and in the process they made me one of the characters in the show, and it's been published now on YouTube. It's called Texas Guns, I think it's called Guns, Religion, and a Great Chicken Fried Steak or something like that. And they were just as nice as they could be. I want to thank you, Melanie and Sonny, for just shooing me on and encouraging me. And Sonny's the one that encouraged me to buy this little video camera, which is a great little thing. It's called an Osmo Pocket 3, and I bought a bunch of other accessories to kind of make it more usable, and to take it to the places that I'm going to be taking you. It needed a protective case and some other protective gear because I plan to beat the shit out of this thing, and you'll see where we're going. I'm going to be making these little videos from time to time, telling you about my role at Lajitas Golf Resort and with the Real Estate Ranch, which is mostly a ranch brokerage out of Midland, Texas. And I have recently joined them, and I'm helping them sell the listing of all the properties out at Lajitas. And they're wonderful, nice people, and they sell all kinds of not only ranches and hill country property and coastal areas, but houses in cities. They're all over the state of Texas and New Mexico too. And so if we can ever help you buy or sell some property, we certainly want to do that. But take a look at this view right here, folks. This here is what I call Carroll Shelby's drag strip, all right? And the reason I call that Carroll Shelby's drag strip is because the famous Carroll Shelby of Ford racing fame, back in the 60s, he came down here and bought a 250,000 acre ranch, which is called Terlingua Ranch. It's now it's cut up into tracts and being sold as ranchette property. But back in the day, in the 60s, when Carroll was really doing well with Ford racing and Shelby Cobras and all that, this was his playground. And what you're looking at now, Shelby owned 250,000 acres down here at a time when southern Brewster County was a lot more lawless than it is now. And he invited all his racing buddies down here, and they had chili cook-offs and probably drank a lot of whiskey and had fun. And so these long straight roads are really a racer's dream. If there's no Texas Department of Public Safety, which back in the 60s there was probably one single little sheriff running these roads down here. Now you don't want to speed because the Sheriff's Department and the DPS are very active down here, and believe me, I know. They never given me a ticket, but I've talked to a couple of them, and you see them all the time. And so another thing about the road here is quite interesting. My cousin Sammy did his master's degree on the Big Bend area of Texas, and it was his master's thesis is what it was. I don't want to get that wrong. But Sammy wrote this thesis about the Big Bend and how it came to be. It was a ranching and mining type outpost out here in the middle of nowhere back then. And they did not have a paved road down into the Big Bend area for years and years, up until I think the 40s, or maybe even as late as the 50s. They did not have a paved road that led to civilization out to Fort Worth and, out into the rest of Texas. This was a very, very isolated place, and the only way to get here was on the train. And you'd get on the train and go to Alpine. If you wanted to go to Sul Ross University, you go there on the train. You wouldn't go there in your car. And so they kept begging the state of Texas to build them a highway, a paved road, came into Alpine and down here to Terlingua and the Big Bend. And the state of Texas back in the 30s and 40s, they were just like, nah, forget it, man. You're on a 20 or 30 year waiting list, for highways. We're trying to get a road to from Houston to Dallas and Galveston, and you know, we got a lot of other things ahead of you, and it's going to be a long time before, you know, the Big Bend has a paved highway. And so there was a very clever, he was the headmaster, I believe, the president of Sul Ross University, and after wasting his breath with the state of Texas, he then came up with an ingenious plan. He found out that if he could establish a national park down here somewhere in the Big Bend area, and he could get the federal government to pass that into law, that they would establish a national park of the United States down here, then they would build the road and they would spend the money to develop the highway system and all the infrastructure that was needed for the national park. And so instead of trying to talk the state of Texas into building us a highway, he started a grassroots effort to raise the money to piece together over 800,000 acres to dedicate and deed over to the federal government so that they would establish Big Bend National Park. And this went on for years. You know, he had little school kids collecting nickels to buy the land to build a park. There were some rich guys that threw in money and land, and you know, there was a whole major effort for several years, but they finally pieced together 800,000+ acres, and they deeded it over to the federal government. And after a few years, the government, they passed it to be a national park, and started dedicating the money and effort to build the highway, and to they got the Corps of Engineers out here in the park to build the main lodge and the roads and the water system in the park. And that's how this place got connected to civilization. And this road that we're driving on now was part of that effort. And so the but back as far as the 60s, there was still, even though there was a highway and there was a national park, but there wasn't a lot of people coming down here up until more recently. You know, there was only the adventurous travelers came down here. All the way down here, there was only one single little gas station and not much of any services. Along the way, I'm going to do another video. If you look on YouTube for Villa de la Mina, or Villa de la Mina, that's a old mining town that I have listed for sale down here next to Lajitas. And I have it listed for sale to be hopefully developed into a boutique hotel, historic hotel, or private residence, artist community, something like that. But the attraction down here for years and years was mining. You had all kinds of cinnabar mining, which is where you get mercury, and you had different other kinds of minerals that were in the ground. There's never really much gold or silver down here. There's a little bit over at Shafter Ghost Town, and I think there still is. If you look for a little video on YouTube called Shafter Ghost Town or Shafter Mining Town, you'll see my little video there. But that's over in Presidio County, kind of south of Marfa, about halfway down to Presidio. And I also did another little video on the Mexican town of Ojinaga, which is right across the border from Presidio. And anyway, like I said, if I don't have someone to talk to, I get to talk to you. And it's been fun being down here. I kind of like the solitude. Now you're starting to see the Chizos Mountains come up there out of the haze in the distance, and that's where Big Bend National Park is. The park is, I read an interesting book not too long ago. It was called In the Shadow of the Chinades. I highly recommend it. It's more about over in Presidio County and down Pinto Canyon Road. And an old Mexican guy named Jose Prieto that helped this homesteader family, and they helped him become an American citizen, and he became one of the biggest sort of sheep and cattle ranchers in the area. But as it relates to this, what you're seeing on the horizon, it talks about how the whole Big Bend area down here was these dramatic mountains and rock formations were all formed by a gigantic volcanic explosion that happened a long time ago. But in the book, they described it as being bigger than Krakatoa east of Java, which is back in the 1800s. It was a huge explosion. This made that look like a hiccup. It was a big volcanic explosion that pushed up all this rock and made this sort of dramatic terrain. And what makes it kind of cool here at the Mexican border, you got the Rio Grande River that runs through this dramatic rock formations and makes for these big, deep canyons. And we'll wander around and see some of that whenever I get some time. But as you can see, my commute to work is, it goes on a ways. I've gotten kind of used to it. I spend a lot of time listening to different stuff on the radio, but a lot of times, truthfully, when we're in this stretch right here in particular, you cannot get any cell phone signal. I'm about to get a satellite phone just for emergencies, but there's no cell phone service over most of this country that we're traveling. When we get down into Terlingua, Studi Butte, there's good signal, and back up in Alpine, of course, there is. But out here in the wilderness, there's not. You'll see the sign coming up on your right that I think we're about 60 miles out from Big Bend National Park headquarters, and about 50 miles, about 30 miles to Studi Butte. Now, it's kind of interesting when you get to Studi Butte, that's the main entry sign to Big Bend National Park. But you don't actually get to the park headquarters for another 30 miles after that. So it's, like I say, the distances out here are long. I've had people that I've picked up at El Paso Airport. I have a little tour and transport company, and so sometimes I go get some of my clients at the airport and take them around the Big Bend. And some of these folks, and there's two ladies from Paris one time, and they had no idea where they were going. They were going down to Marfa to some art event down there, and Marfa is a whole different animal because of the minimalist contemporary art community there. It's a whole different attraction. But these ladies obviously had their travel agent book all their stuff, and all they knew is that they were flying to El Paso. A driver was going to pick them up and take them to their hotel in Marfa. And so I pick them up. I get on Interstate 10 going east back to Van Horn, where you turn off to go to Marfa. And this lady from Paris, very, very well-dressed, well-heeled lady, she says to me, "So, how far is it to our hotel?" She says in a very composed way, "How far is it to our hotel?" I said, "Oh, it's about 3 hours." And she goes, 3 hours? You're kidding. And she couldn't believe that, you know. I said, "Oh yeah, it's 2 hours down to Van Horn. We'll take a ride, and it's a little over an hour to get down from